Hello and welcome to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast where we talk about whatever. My name is Matt. With me is my co-host, Pokemon enthusiast Bill Barber. How you doing, Bill?
I'm honestly more of a Pokemon hater at this point. I really, now that I think about it.
Yeah, well, I kind of goofed a little bit. I was gonna say Pokemon Master or like Gen 3 enthusiast, something like
Gen
that.
3
But
enthusiast.
I hiccuped a little bit because the recording like counter in the top corner there, huh?
Oh, you lagged out a bit.
Yeah,
I was just gonna
having a
say
little bit of lagging issues right now.
I was just well, it's funny. This happened with all the Pokemon episodes we've done. But I was just
I
gonna
guess I
say
didn't
like
realize that.
uh, I was gonna say like Pokemon like Ruby and Sapphire enthusiast. Yes, Pokemon enthusiast though, not so much anymore these days.
There. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I grew up playing Pokemon. I always loved Pokemon, but now I'm just kind of at a point where like I like the manga and like every now and then I'll go back to some of the old ones, but like I'm not really interested in the new ones.
Yeah, the manga has been a fun ride so far. Um, Trying to get me to play the new games is like one of the hardest things. Like I kind of like Sword and Shield retrospectively now that I've been playing it again recently, but Violet and Scarlet are just I have no interest in. Sun and Moon actually killed my enthusiasm for the series for a long
Same,
time. Um, and if anything, I'm like Game Freak's
same.
biggest like hater these days. So
Yeah, I can't really blame you there.
yeah,
So well, yeah, for me it's like there's so many JRPGs that I've missed over the years that it's like, okay, I could either catch up on all of these huge critically acclaimed like super popular games that have been around for decades, or I could play another Pokemon game. Like,
yeah, like I'll replay maybe like Emerald every now and then or Black or White or like even like the originals, but like I don't know, the new ones just do nothing for me.
understandable. So I was listening to the newest GNC episode earlier this week. It was when you guys were doing like manga artists and manga
Oh
in
yeah,
general.
yep.
Um, and at one point Alex said I don't remember which series or which manga she was talking about at the time, but at one point she meant like the way one of them draws hair. Um, and I just felt the need I had to bring up a shout out to Takeshi Obata, the manga artist who did Death Note and Bakugan. The way that particular artist draws hair is like no other one I've ever seen. Like I know you haven't really cracked into the Death Note manga yet, but like it's insane like
Mm.
how much detail gets put into that.
Yeah, that's like one of those interesting mangas that's pretty well known that has a separate writer and artist.
Mhm. Yeah. Um so last week, I after we did the recording and everything, the following day, Saturday, I was planning on cracking into Sandland, the game.
Hmm.
And I did play it a little bit. I played it for like about an hour for like the 4 or 5 hours I had set aside for gaming. Um, but I played it for like an hour and like enjoying it. It's fine, it's not a hyper complicated game or anything. But like I just kind of got the itch and I just switched over to Persona 4 and just played that.
I mean, I don't want to
But
say it's a better game, but it's a better game. So
well, I don't know. I know I've barely scratched the surface, but I've actually made quite a bit of progress for me at least in that game this past week.
hmm.
I'm 8 hours in or so. The last thing I did was I saved Yukiko and went on a bro date with Yosuke. Is that his name?
Yes,
Hmm. Yeah, we had
bro
a bro
date.
date, and that was where I left off. Yeah.
Yeah, you
I don't know. I'm
the
definitely
character.
enjoying it so far. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the characters in four are like one of the reasons why I love that game so much. Like Yosuke's an awesome like sidekick. Basically, Chie's fun. Yukiko is
Mhm.
best girl confirmed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's
um.
my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember. Actually, my buddy Matt, who you've met him a few times, he actually like remembered that you said you were a Yukiko fan. He was like, "Oh, I kind of like Chie, but I know, you know." Um, but yeah, I've been enjoying it so far. I've actually the past week I've had like the song that plays when you're just kind of wandering around the town. It's been stuck in my head all week, and honestly, it hasn't
Uh,
bothered me
before school or after school.
after school.
So the one that's like heartbreak heartbeat. I think it's called.
Yeah, yeah, that one.
The, the whole
The fucking
soundtrack's
the
amazing.
jams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I routinely will listen to that soundtrack. I have the physical CD and everything because I love it so much.
Oh,
Um,
do you?
yeah, I routinely listen to that soundtrack like on a monthly basis. It's so good.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's a solid soundtrack. Literally I haven't heard a track in that game so that I've disliked. Like they're all
Mm.
pretty good,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely enjoying my time with it so far.
Mm. Nah, Persona 4 is a joy.
Mm.
But
But aside from that, I finally finished off Phase 3 of Marvel.
oh good. Where
So,
did phase 3 end? I can't even remember at this point.
uh, well, weirdly enough, it ended with Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Right.
You'd think Endgame would have been the end of it, but no, it was that second Spider-Man movie.
Hmm. Oh,
But
but
yeah,
yeah.
it was pretty good. I gotta say, I dislike out of the Spider Mans we've seen. Like this is definitely my least favorite, and it's nothing against Tom Holland or the MCU or anything like that. I don't know. I just don't like this version of Spider Man, and it's not even just him. It's like the setting itself as well. Like crazy about what they did with MJ either. Like I don't know. There's just certain things about it. There's cool things about the movies too. There's plenty of things to like about them, but just overall, I just think this is the least good Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man's been kind of a mess for a long time now. Even in like the mainline comics, they just don't know what to do with the guy. I swear sometimes.
Hmm.
But that's cool. I haven't watched a Marvel movie in probably a year. Like I'm so done with superhero movies at this point.
Understandable. It was kind of a thing for me though, where it's just like, all right, I either got to buckle down and do it now, or I'm never gonna do it. And like,
Hmm.
while it wouldn't break my heart to never have watched all the Marvel movies, it's still kind of one of those things, especially now that like, I'm part of a pop culture podcast, and they got to at least watch them once. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I have no interest in watching any of the Phase 4 movies though. So,
well, the new Spider-Man movie is part of Phase 4, so I mean, I'm probably gonna jump into it. But plus,
true.
I've really enjoyed the Thor movies. That's one thing. Like, if I was just gonna like cut out every other movie, I would definitely just have the Thor movies on their own because they're all very enjoyable for me, at least.
That's fair.
Um,
I
but
am
yeah,
kind of interested in the new Superman movie that's coming out.
I didn't know there was a new one coming out.
Yeah, James Gunn is making like their DC's redoing their whole cinematic universe again because they fucked it up the first time. So yeah, they have a new Superman coming out that it looks pretty interesting. I'm curious. As long as they don't do Man of Steel again, I'll be fine.
They've they need to just realize that that's just not where that's just not DC's specialty.
Mm.
DC does animated movies, and if they want to do live action, the television shows are the ones that really end up hitting. Like,
Well,
when was the
they've
last
had
time
a
they had like a really, huh?
they've had a few good ones recently. Like the Batman was apparently really good. The Robert Pattinson one.
I've heard mixed things.
I've heard most like DC fans really liked it. I've heard it's pretty. It's a pretty good representation of the character for the most part. Um, Other than that, like Wonder Woman was a great film, the original Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I did hear good things about that one. But I mean, How long ago did that come out? That was a bit ago.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's just one of
Eh,
those things where it's like they get a hit like once every like 4 or 5 years,
Yeah, unfortunately.
and it's upsetting. It's one of those things. Oh, I watched Deadpool 2 for the first time earlier in the week. That was pretty great.
I've only seen that once. I've got to rewatch it because it's been such a long time.
Well, I mean, like overall, the first one is absolutely better than the second one. But I loved like the end of the second one where he's just like he gets the little time travel thing, and he's just like, "All right, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna save my girl. I'm gonna save all the people that died in that really funny scene where all the people died, and then I'm just gonna go back and shoot Ryan Reynolds before he becomes Green Lantern, and I'm gonna shoot Ryan Reynolds when he was Deadpool in the Wolverine movie." It's just like goofy as fuck. I loved it.
Yeah, it's just that self-referential humor. Um,
Also, apparently the Deadpool Wolverine movie is going to be part of the MCU.
yeah, because they Fox owns all that stuff. I mean, Disney owns all that stuff now. So,
Yeah, Disney owns Fox too, so
well,
Disney owns
Disney
like fucking
owns
everything.
Disney owns 20th Century Fox, which is now just
Mm,
20th Century Media.
gotcha. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. It was like, okay, we're just going to slot Deadpool in there, which means X-Men is also part of the MCU now.
I'm fine with that. I just if I get to see I get to see Hugh Jackman in the yellow suit. That's really all I wanted.
And he's going to be dropping F-bombs like every 5 seconds.
That's fine. I just wanted to see him in the yellow suit.
I'm pretty sure he dropped like 18 F-bombs just in the trailer.
Hey, might as well. I mean, if any character
Yeah.
is gonna do it, Wolverine would be the character.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I swear, every time he retires from that role, he always comes back for one more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just can't imagine anybody else being Wolverine. Like,
I know.
eventually it's gonna happen.
Well, it's like you're never gonna you'll never be able to picture anyone else other than Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's okay because they killed him. Oh, sorry, spoiler. Oh, whatever. What am I saying? Anybody who hasn't seen it yet, they're not gonna watch it.
I mean, Endgame spoilers at this point are like,
I mean, I knew he was gonna die before I watched it, so I mean, whatever.
I mean, Endgame spoilers were fucking everywhere. Like they were in every subreddit that wasn't even related to fucking comics or movies.
I mean, there
It
were a
was
couple of deaths that I didn't know about, but Iron Man, yeah, I knew he was going.
yeah, well, because Robert Downey Jr. was his contract was over, so it just made sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but anyway, so we have a topic for this episode. We kind of alluded to it earlier on, but we're actually doing the next entry in Pokemon Adventures retrospective.
Yes. Which
It's
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's really funny because what we had mentioned when we did the last one that I was really looking forward to doing this one because this is my favorite set of games in the series, and this one ended up taking me fucking forever to read.
Yeah, well, you got a lot going on, and you had your vacation and all this other stuff. Like, I mean, I think you started reading it like right around when we did the last one, and it just took a while to get through it.
So I read volume one like around then. I read volume
Mhm.
two like a month ago, and then I just like power read the rest of it like within the last 3 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing with like the Pokemon ones. I think it works really well if you just kind of binge read an arc.
Yeah, honestly, especially in this case because this one until literally the last page of the arc is pretty standalone and like has very little to do with the previous storylines.
Mhm.
So that was very interesting right off the bat. Um, So yeah, we're gonna for I guess we should say for this one we're gonna be strictly covering the Ruby and Sapphire arc.
Yes. Right off the bat, I gotta say, I think this one, at least up to this point of what we've read, I think this is the most solid story and has the most solid main characters.
I'd agree, to a degree. Um, Story wise, I it is definitely the most like right on to the games for the most part. Like
Mhm.
it essentially follows the plot of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, even though it's kind of funny because there's an Emerald arc later that we'll be getting to.
Which
Um,
has it's so unrelated to like the
I know
story of the
because
games.
because
Like,
they cover the Emerald stuff in the Ruby and Sapphire arc, and I was really confused by that for a minute. But
see, without going into too much detail, the setting of the Emerald arc is the Battle Frontier. So it pretty much entirely takes place
uh,
at the Battle Frontier. That's what that is.
gotcha. Um, but yeah, like story wise, it's probably the closest to the actual games that we've had so far.
Mhm.
Um, and character wise, it's kind of an interesting subversion because the characters are basically what they are in the games, but they kind of they subvert the status quo in a pretty big way, I'd like to say,
Mhm.
because the status quo for these characters, so their game counterparts are Brandon and May. And everybody knows May because she was in the anime for like 4 seasons. Um, Although in the anime she was Norman's daughter, which isn't what they went with in the manga. They went with it more if you're playing as Brandon, so she is Professor Birch's daughter this time around,
Mhm.
which actually makes more sense just visually because they look more like each other.
Yeah, same with Ruby and Norman.
Yes. Yeah, we should probably bring that up. Character names for this one is Brandon is Ruby and May is Sapphire. Uh because they have to name everyone after the games in these in the manga.
Well, to be honest, I kind of like that. You know, I don't know, like the like super Americanized names and stuff with like Brandon and May and I mean Wally's still just Wally, but
See, I
um
thought Wally was going to be Emerald, but apparently there's an Emerald later on. So
yeah, and it's a yeah, I don't know. I won't
we'll,
get into it, but it's a
we'll
fucking
get to
bizarre
it.
character design.
We'll get to it eventually. We'll get to it not in the well, actually. Are we going
Yeah,
to
it
do
will be
Fire Red
the
Leaf Green and Emerald together? Because Emerald is pretty short.
um I mean it's all part of the same like box set. We could tackle each arc separately if you prefer. But that's
Uh,
totally up for debate.
we'll we'll keep that up in the air. It depends on how long it takes me to get through Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Yeah,
Um,
for that reason alone, it might be better to do individual arcs, but we'll figure that out later.
okay.
Um,
Um, yeah, but so it's really funny to me because as much as I love like Gen 3, the characters kind of get a bit of an infamous reputation for being some of the blandest in the games. Like people refer to Brandon as Blandon because he is one of the probably least remarkable protagonists in the games. Speaking
mm,
strictly the games,
yeah.
um, it's more the world that kind of brings you into Gen 3. In
Mhm.
Pokemon Adventures, I I will say first off, I was not expecting the main character to have daddy issues.
No, I one of the first notes I wrote down when I was reading through this the first time is that Ruby has Boruto syndrome. He's got it hard.
Yeah, except it's like even well, no, actually, no. Ruby's is more believable than Baruto's. I'll say because we
Yeah.
found out later what actually happened, but you kind of get it with Ruby. Um,
Mhm.
and I will say the biggest departure for Ruby this time around is he is rather than the traditional May, who is the contest freak in the games. This time around, they made Ruby the contest fanatic.
Yeah,
which
he's like a super pretty boy. He's like obsessed with contests. He's got the daddy issues. He's got like the whole package going on.
like his opening appearance in the series is literally he's riding in the back of the moving truck like in the games, but like they showcase him and he looks all serious. He's got like these glasses on and he's like he looks like he's doing something really important. And then they cut away and it's him giving his Skitty like a hat. He was knitting
Yeah.
a hat. And it's like,
Yep.
oh. And he completely
Yeah.
just ignores his mom who's trying to move into the house
Yeah,
because he's
she's like, "Oh, the truck got stuck in the mud. Can you help us out?" And it's like, "No, I'm not
it's
letting
like
my Pokemon get all muddy."
yeah, Ruby, I'm not gonna lie, like first reading, I was like, I don't really like this guy very much.
He
Um
grows on you.
he
That's
does.
one thing. That's one thing I'll say about this, and I think part of it is because there's only two main characters, and we stick with them pretty much throughout the whole thing, as opposed to like earlier arcs where we'd have like three, even four main characters or more, and
Hell, in the end of Gold and Silver, there's like eight, and you're like, what
we
the
would split up
fuck?
our time between them. This gives them all plenty of time to develop. Yeah, I know. But because there's only two main characters in this one, it gives them both plenty of time to develop, and
Yes.
it's a huge boon to this particular story arc.
They're also both very entwined because we'll
Hmm.
eventually encounter Sapphire, who Sapphire is the most drastic departure from her game counterpart. Um,
Oh, by far.
she's like a wild child. First appearance is she's in the woods wearing a loincloth made of reeds and is wearing leaves as a top.
Hmm.
And it's like, what the fuck?
And she
Keep
looks
keep,
like she's all like scarred up. She's got claws. Like,
keep in mind she's 10. I'm just gonna put that out there.
yep.
Um, she's 10 and Ruby's 11 because we actually get canonical ages for them in the manga this time around.
Hmm. Right off the
Um,
bat, too, pretty much.
yeah. Well, this manga does something I really like, where in between each chapter, it gives a full readout of both Ruby and Sapphire, like their full teams, how many ribbons Ruby has, and how many badges May. I'm gonna mix up the names routinely, so just keep in mind. But how many badges Sapphire has, all their like
Hmm.
Pokemon stats and everything, and it's cool because May Sapphire has the levels and everything, and then Ruby has the contest like attribute readout screens, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It also says
Um,
like where their location is at a given time.
mhm. And they cross paths a lot, which is weird because they have completely different like paths that they have to take for their goals.
Well, what's funny is in their first meeting, they because Ruby runs away from home because he's got massive daddy issues, and he's trying to like make a point, which you find out later is entirely ironic. But he runs away from home, and he's basically on the run constantly
Mhm.
from his dad, who's also looking for him because he thinks his parents aren't going to let him do contests. But eventually he encounters Professor Birch up in the tree hiding from the Mighty Annas, and he basically in the process gets his starter, and he is so disappointed. One thing I don't like about Ruby is how he just belittles his Pokemon constantly.
Yeah, it's like if they're not like they don't fit perfectly in the box that he needs them to be for the contest. He's just like there's a thing that happens later that just really irks me, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, but his starter is so. I will say, I am Trico. Sceptile is my favorite Pokemon. He doesn't get picked in this, so I was very disappointed off the bat right away. But
Mhm.
uh, essentially, when Ruby encounters Professor Birch, he notices he only has two starters left because the other one has already been taken, but it's Mudkip and Trico, and he ends up taking the Mudkip, and he's so disappointed in it because it's so kind of pathetic at first. Like it's got like a snot drip and everything,
Mhm.
and he basically is like, this is useless. I don't want this, but I guess I'll take it." And I'm just like, dude, I'm like,
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Um, But it's weird too because you'd think that having a Mudkip, which will eventually be a Swampert, which would be like perfect for like the tough category, which he didn't have covered at that point. So,
Well, because despite being obsessed with contests, it's very clear that Ruby has no idea like how deep they actually are,
mhm.
and he's very one-minded with these things. Like he's a shit battler. Like he can't battle at all at first, like because he's too important. He cares too much about his Pokemon's looks. He hasn't actually trained their strength up at all yet. So like when
Well,
he
that.
they
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that that's actually like a thing that gets touched on later is that he's actually really good at battling. He just doesn't like people to see him battle.
well, yeah, we'll get to Ruby is an incredibly deep character. We'll find out later. So is
Mhm.
Sapphire. But in the process of this whole encounter with Professor Birch, he ends up obtaining Professor Birch's Pokédex, but he ends up getting separated from him and ends up getting rescued by this strange creature covered in leaves that he thinks at first is a Pokemon, and then he finds out it's actually
Mhm.
Sapphire.
Yeah, it was pretty
And
funny.
they get into a bit of a scuffle, and they end up making this agreement where they're gonna basically challenge each other to like this like challenge. I think they have like is it like 100 days to
Yeah, 80 days.
80 they have 80 days to basically one has to either get all the badges or the other has to get all the ribbons before the other.
Mhm.
And this leads to like one of my favorite meta like in joke scenes where the whole time Ruby makes fun of Sapphire for the fact that she's wearing leaves, and he's like he basically comments how like you're never going to fit in society looking like that
Mhm.
basically. So when she's asleep, he ends up altering like a set of his clothes to fit her, and that's actually a really interesting in joke because it explains why May and Brandon's clothes look so similar in the games.
Mhm.
But
And actually, I love how oh, sorry. This lag is killing us.
yeah,
But I was gonna say it's actually a really funny joke that they make when she wakes up and she finds the clothes and she's like, "How did he get my measurements?"
yeah,
She's like,
yeah. She like she's like, did he get my measurements while I was sleeping?
"Yeah,
Um, she's 10, by the way. I just want to put that out there. Oh, granted, he's 11 though, but it's still weird. Um,
hmm,
yeah. Also, this is I swear is Katsuka's weird sense of humor with his writing. I swear sometimes.
hmm,
Um, also, while we're on that, we should comment on Yamamoto's art. I think he has improved significantly in this volume. Well, this arc compared to the the Gold and Silver Crystal arc.
yeah." I think this is kind of where he finds his footing and kind of figures out like the kind of style he wants to go with going forward.
He still really likes to draw the ladies, though, particularly one part of their anatomy.
He's a butt guy.
He really is. I swear it's like a fetish. I swear it's a fetish at this point.
Hey,
Um,
well, you know what? Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's the fact that they're 10 and 11, but like, I also understand being a butt guy. So,
I mean, they're 10 and 11, but I don't buy it with that art. Not at all.
no,
Um,
no.
because it's like he goes from Crystal, who wears spandex the entire time, to Sapphire, who also wears spandex the entire time for the most part. And it's like the
Mhm,
amount of close-up shots. I'm just like, Jesus. I'm like, dude. I'm like, you gotta stop a little bit here.
mhm. Was he? There was another. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but there's another scene later on where she does basically the same thing that Crystal did in the previous arc, where she just kind of like tears her clothes off right in front of somebody, and she's just like, "No!" Like,
She does it like 4 times. Like it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
it's like Jesus
Um,
Christ.
it's like this manga is weird. This manga's got a really. I mean, it's not this. I'll say this arc is not as blatant with it as like the previous ones were, but there is a few moments. I didn't have a what the fuck moment this time around. I will say.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I'll say with all the things that we say about like the kind of weird shit that goes on, like just for the record, anyone who hasn't actually read these, overall, this is incredibly tame for manga. Like incredibly
True.
tame. So like, yeah,
But
we'll make our little comments and stuff, but like it's really not that bad. Like
well,
it's played up for laughs. There's nothing like really lewd or anything in it, but it's just like one of those like you're reading it, you're just like, what the fuck, Pokemon? Like,
well, that's the thing. It's tame for manga standards. For Pokemon standards, it's like, what the hell is going
yeah,
on here? Like
for sure.
Pokemon Adventures is like the weird like cousin of like the main series that is just completely off the rails.
For real. Um,
Um, Going on though with the series. So what I find interesting is the way they kind of handle progression through this arc is essentially you'll have a chapter that kind of follows Ruby where he's slowly gaining Pokemon and starting to like train his team for contests, and then it will switch over to Sapphire, who is progressively getting her team ready for gym battles, essentially.
mhm. Yeah.
And there's kind of a cool moment where like Sapphire gets to the first gym, and it's Roxanne, and the gyms in the manga all have weird gimmicks to them. And
Mhm.
for Roxanne's gym, she makes all of them take like a written test before they can fight her. And it's kind of funny because like
Mhm.
Sapphire comes off as like rock stupid at first, but she's actually really smart. She just doesn't know how she doesn't understand words. Um,
Yeah.
so she ends up like acing the test, and Roxanne is so perplexed that she just kind of is like, "All right, let's do the battle." And Sapphire ends up using her knowledge of Pokemon and like stuff that she got from her father essentially to trick Roxanne into basically she wins the battle by like using like magnetism of nose pass. Um,
Mhm.
which I thought was a really cool idea. Um, it's also really funny because like the badges have completely gone back to just being badges, not like the weird shit that was going on in the original arc.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of like the general setup of this arc. I think that's a direct result of the way the games changed. Because the original first two sets of games with red, blue, gold, and silver, like yeah, they had stories, but like they were kind of vague stories.
Hmm.
Whereas from Ruby Sapphire onward, they have a very specific story. Like this is the villain. This is what he's trying to do. This is his motivation. Like everything before that was just Team Rocket. We're gonna get we're gonna get the power. We're gonna get the money. Then we're gonna get the bitches. Like it's pretty much like Team Rocket's whole thing. But like you got Team Magma and Team Aqua that have like actual goals. Like the leaders have actual goals. Everybody has like their own motivations, their own thing that drives them. And I think
Yeah,
that's part of the reason why this story is so coherent compared to the other ones is because the the bones of it already existed in the game.
true. That's very true. Um, it's also really funny too because like this series also continues to do the thing where like they'll show the Pokédex all the time, and it'll use like in-game like footage. It'll actually use like the Pokemon screenshots from um from the uh from the actual games to give like the Pokemon descriptions, which is really cool.
Mhm.
We also get a lot of Ruby's like development. Like he really gains like a repertoire with his like Pokemon. Like his Skitty and his Poochyena end up evolving like super quick. Like after this,
Mhm.
and he also like he gains like a new respect for his Mudkip that he kind of like gains over time because he realizes the Mudkip is actually pretty useful.
Yeah.
And when the Mudkip evolves into Marshtomp, he's like, "Oh, sweet! Like you caught up with with your friends."
Yeah. We skipped over Wally.
Oh yeah, we did. Poor Wally. He's so fucking forgettable in the game, and he's kind of forgettable in the manga as well. Um,
For real.
so I like the fact that in the manga they kind of changed it up where rather than like you basically have to catch his first Pokemon for him, he actually gets loaned one of Ruby's Pokemon because Ruby has Ralts at the beginning as well, and he loans it off to Wally basically as a Pokemon guy, like basically just a temporary thing for him to have. But then they end up getting separated like really quickly after that.
Yeah, it's a really fun twist on the whole like Wally's starter was essentially a Ralts in the games, and it was just a really fun twist to be like, oh no, that was actually Ruby's Ralts that he just ended up with because they got
Yeah, and
separated and they never had an opportunity to give it back.
yeah, and it's like it's interesting too because like Wally Wally is literally the least interesting rival in like the entire series just because he literally during the game he literally appears twice. Once like the first time he shows up he's really pathetic, and then he shows up right at the end and he actually has a really competent team, but by then you're so over leveled that you
Mhm.
just like steamroll him. um
Yeah.
and he's never like a really a hindrance like Gary or well Blue or Silver were in the previous gens.
Yeah.
um
Um,
oh, go on.
yeah. I don't know. Wally's just a weird character. And I liked the whole like how like oh Norman was gonna help me catch a Pokemon, but then he shows up and he's just like, yeah. So I actually talked to your parents, and like you're like really sick, dude. I'm not gonna encourage this in you. Like
Yeah, it's just a weird
I just thought that was kind of
situation,
ridiculous.
but he still does it anyways, which is the one thing about Wally I like is that he's at least determined.
Yeah, for sure.
We also get so one of the things I love too is like this series really plays with the fact that like they really just give away the badges like candy sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
because in the process, after Sapphire defeats Roxanne and gets the first badge, he then summons a whale lord out of the sea and uses that as her transportation to the uh the island so she can face the next gym leader. And it's really funny because like throughout their adventure, like Ruby and Sapphire will run into each other, and their literal reaction every time they run into each other is they just go, "You."
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
fun
I will
because
say.
go on.
Oh God. I was just
Well,
gonna say. Goddamn. Um. Yeah. I was gonna say that Sapphire, like, yeah, she gets the badges like pretty easily throughout, but like unlike the previous arcs, the like she's actually winning battles to get them. It's not just kind of like, oh hey, I like you, here's a badge, you know.
well, they actually play with that because the third gym leader well, God, I forget his name. The one that like is like the jolly guy with the beard.
Oh, Watson.
Watson literally gives away badges just for fun. And he tries to do this to
Yeah.
Sapphire and she slaps it away. She's like, "No, we're going to actually fight for this." I thought that was an interesting twist on it. Oh, we also forgot to mention they make fun of the fact that Ruby's hat is the dumbest hat of like any trainer in the series.
Yeah, I love that they make a joke that even Sapphire thinks it's his hair. Like
He's like, "It's a
I
hat."
don't know. I thought that was really funny because I literally thought that was his hair for like 20 years.
Everyone did, and then like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came on. You can see his actual hair poking out under, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute."
Yeah, it's just I remember like I think it was my friend Steve pointed it out one day. I was like, holy shit! Like it was like mind blown. Like I had never even considered that it was a hat.
It's just such a dumb looking hat. Like, what is going on there? Um, yeah, but it's just really funny. And then like there's a running gag throughout this entire like a series where Ruby really wants a Milotic because Milotics are just insanely beautiful.
Mhm.
And throughout the course of his adventure, he ends up obtaining a Feebas, because this Feebas really takes a liking to him, but he has
Mhm.
no idea that Feebas evolves into Milotic. So he's all like, "This thing's so ugly, I don't want this." He's like, "Fine, I'll take it. I'll just get rid of it when I have the chance." Which is like, damn, dude, harsh.
That's one thing that I like about this manga series though, is that like, because in the games like they make it seem like, oh, we need this Pokedex filled out so that we have records of all these Pokemon and everything. But like everybody already knows about all these Pokemon and what evolves into what and everything. And the manga makes it seem like Pokemon are much more of a mystery than the games do.
Yeah,
Um, and I also love how the he gets the Feebas in the first place, because he bumps into a fisherman, and the fisherman is like dead set on he wants to catch some Feebas because they're rare and he could probably sell them for some money. And like he's like, oh, I've been sitting in this spot for like weeks and I haven't been able to catch any Feebas. I haven't, I've been getting his magic carps and all this other shit. And like Ruby doesn't know what the Feebas looks like. He just says, "Oh, it's a rare Pokemon, so it must be a beautiful Pokemon. It must be very aesthetically pleasing." So, like, he catches the Feebas and he goes, "That's ugly. That's probably not it." He throws it back, and he literally catches the same Feebas like 20 times after throwing it back each time before it finally like he realizes what it is. And it's just like the goofiest running joke in that little like one page of panels.
yeah. It's funny too because like the whole joke is like he doesn't want the Feebas because he thinks it's ugly. Meanwhile, the Feebas is literally like the Gen 3 version of like of Magikarp, where it's like, yeah, it doesn't look special, but it evolves into something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, he has no idea, so he's all like, "This thing's ugly. I don't want it."
Yeah, but
Um,
then he ends up taking it in because he's like, "Oh, if I can win the beauty contest with this ugly piece of shit, then that'll just show how skilled I am."
yeah, he's like he thinks about it in such a backwards way, but it makes sense in context at the time. Also, that fisherman becomes
Yeah,
such like a pretty significant character throughout this arc, which is kind of funny.
I feel like there's always that one fisherman throughout each of the arcs that we've had where he's just like a super important dude, but he still has no name. It's just always just the fisherman.
See, this guy is significant though because he straight up is just wearing a speedo the entire time,
Mhm.
and it's very distracting.
Yeah, well, um, so trying to think. Where did we leave off? Did Sapphire fight Brawly? Is that where we
Yeah,
left off?
she finished. She beat Brawley, and she also beat Watson and got his badges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and out the new Mauville or Mauville, that was bizarre.
Oh yeah, like where like he thinks Ruby thinks they're super cute and he wants one, and then they turn into these murder machines.
Yeah, it's like this giant underground like amusement park or whatever.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, really weird. Um, so I think around this time is where we start to really kind of like, because we've kind of like seen bits and pieces of the two main antagonist groups of this arc.
Mhm.
But I think around this time is when they really start kind of. Because we haven't really talked about any of them yet.
Yeah, Team Aqua and
How,
Team
how do you
Magma.
feel about? Oh, go
Um,
ahead.
Team Aqua and Team Magma were really interesting to me. Like they had they're an interesting dynamic in the games themselves because it's like the only time we had two teams who basically had these two very wildly different extremist like views and like desires for the world. And
Mhm.
the manga handles it pretty well. I still think Archie and who's the fire guy? I can never remember his name.
Maxi.
Yeah, Archie and Maxie, they're kind of the same one-dimensional, just kind of extremists that they were in the games. What
Yeah.
makes this interesting is the side character, like side members of Aqua and Magma. They have some surprisingly deep personalities, and they interact with the main two like frequently throughout the story.
Mhm. Also, I gotta say, the one time we actually have a character in a series that I'm into named Matt, and he's just a total like pushover.
Yeah, that happened. Well, I mean, I was the guy that got turned into a fucking Pokemon hybrid in the last arc, so
Well, at least Bill is super smart.
I guess he can't. I mean, Leaf. I mean, Green just broke into his house and hacked his computer while he was sleeping. So,
True.
uh,
I don't know, it's just weird. You think with how common a name Matt is, you'd see it in like fiction more often, but you really don't.
yeah. Um. So the way they did contests in this, I thought was really kind of bizarre. Like they kind of like speed run all the contests throughout this arc.
Yeah, you don't really see too much of them, like with like the specific.
Hmm.
I apologize, folks. We're getting a lot of lagging in this recording, so we keep getting these points where we're talking over each other, and then we're both just silent for a minute, waiting for it to catch up.
Yeah, I don't get why it's really bad on this one. Like, because I'm not getting any like lag notifications on my end. Hmm,
Yeah, it's
weird.
it's weird because using this since episode 2, and we've had a couple issues here and there, but usually it works itself out. I don't think it's ever gone on this long before.
Yeah, no, this one's really bad. So yeah, apologies in advance. Um, we were talking about a contest though.
Yes. Yeah, it's just really weird. Oh, we didn't mention Ruby meeting the Pokemon fan club chairman and then being like kindred spirits.
Right. Yeah, yeah, because he's like the one like kind of crossover between the previous arcs and then this one.
Yeah, he's there in every single arc. He'll always be there. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where they instantly like, oh, you think Pokemon are beautiful and should be treated with respect and not battle each other? Me too. Let's make Pokeblocks together.
Oh yeah, because they had to bring up Pokeblocks, which is a they're not as bad as Poppins, but they were still it was such a thing I just did not care about in the games at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're not doing contests, there's really no reason to do them anyway.
Yeah, I never did contests, period, just because I could never I just could never be bothered.
I messed with them a lot when I was a kid, just because it was like, oh, it's a fun new little mini game that we can do, and you know, just kind of like an alternate course from gym badges. So like, I don't know, just for shits and giggles, I did it. And I think I did it a little bit when I played Omega Ruby, but I mean, it's not a super important part of the game. It's not something I prioritize by any means.
You just don't get anything for it, really. That's like my whole reason why I was kind of like just I didn't care.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so they do the whole Pokeblock thing, and then they get kidnapped by what was it's Team Magma, right? Team Magma
I believe so.
kidnaps them.
Yeah, Ruby interacts with Magma for the most part, and Sapphire reacts with Aqua more.
Right, right, because Sapphire was there for the whole volcano incident, and that was why Flannery thought that Max. Hello.
You just completely phased out there for a minute.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, I could still see you the whole time. That's weird.
Well, you were there. You just kind of
Yeah, I was
froze.
just saying that. Oh, okay. But yeah, I was just saying that. That. Yeah, Sapphire thought that Magma was the good guys because Flannery teamed up with Magma to try and like reignite the volcano later on.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that was interesting. That's also where like Sapphire and Flannery had their whole like kind of like bonding moment before they actually fought for their gym badge.
yeah, which they did naked.
Yeah, that happened because they were in the
They were in a
hot
hot
spring.
spring.
Because we needed a
Yeah,
hot spring moment for this, just so
yeah, they had
Sapphire could take Sapphire
the.
could take her clothes off again.
Yeah, right. It's fucking God, so bizarre sometimes.
Also, I think Flannery's like a lot older,
Um,
which just makes it weirder. Well, I guess Japan culture is different. But
well, I don't think she's. I think she's supposed to be like 16 or 17. Like, so she's definitely supposed to be young, at least for a
yeah,
gym leader.
true. She's still on the older
Um,
side though, as compared to the 10-year-old Sapphire.
yeah, that's true. Um, so we haven't really talked too much about the specifics of like are there any of the magma or aqua members that stood out to you specifically?
So I know for Magma in particular, there was the female one that really gets like close with Ruby. I think her name's Courtney, I believe it was.
Mhm.
Um and her whole
Yeah.
backstory is kind of interesting because you find out she was actually a regular trainer originally who was into contests before like everything just kind of went bad for her.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like how the magma guys all have like their own little gimmicks.
Yeah. They're
Like
pretty entertaining.
yeah, like Courtney, like she would make like these like little like juice concoctions out of like berries and stuff.
Hmm.
And she would have like she would make like a sticky paste or whatever with them, or she would like coat her gloves in like I guess like hot sauce or something, and then like just like slap people in the face with it, get it in their eyes.
Yeah.
Um,
So it was very bizarre.
and there's the other guy, I forget his name. He did like weird illusions with like this. He had like a special lighter that caused illusions. It was weird, but it was kind of cool.
Hmm. Yeah, there was cool stuff like that. It's really interesting to me that like the actual like team members were more interesting than the leaders this time around.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like more effort was put into characterizing the magma guys and the aqua guys, though.
Yeah, the aqua there was like one aqua character that I think was kind of significant, but other than that, they really didn't do much.
Was it Tabitha?
I think so. I think she was the only one that really mattered.
Tabitha was a man. It
Then I don't know
was the
who I'm
big one.
talking about. I don't know who I'm talking about anymore. Um, that shows how little they
I
mattered.
no, I'm with you, man. That threw me off the first time I was reading it. I was like, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
that shows just how little they mattered.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm thinking about it now. Like, we should probably get into the whole backstory behind Norman and why Ruby is the way he is.
Mhm. Because I think this would have been around the time when they had their little showdown at the like
Oh,
Weather Institute place.
yeah, because basically Ruby's mad because Norman basically wanted to be a gym leader and he was going to go take a test to become a gym leader, but he ended up not passing it, and he went off to train for 5 years, basically just abandoning the family behind. And because of that, Ruby has this massive resentment for him. But
Mhm.
at the same time, we also find out that like because Ruby was impatient and just kind of fucked off like the second he got into the house, he didn't read his birthday card, which actually had a message from his dad saying that was going to let him go off and do contests.
Yeah, I was pretty much giving him his blessing to like go off and chase his dreams and whatever. Like it's like wow, if you had actually just not been a little shit, you would have realized that your dad actually cares and like,
Yeah, it was just one of those cases where it was
you
like
could
it's
have
all
you could have
because
gone on your way and done your thing without like, making your mom worry and
yeah, making
yeah.
inconveniencing your dad basically.
Mhm. But yeah, his dad like tracks him down at the Weather Institute and they have this big battle in the rain and everything.
Yeah,
Um
and he basically ends off by being like, he's like, I don't care what you do, just don't do anything dumb and call your mother every once in a while.
yeah, pretty much. I gotta say, I love that that Ruby definitely inherited his dad's mean mug.
Yeah, he did
Because he,
because
he
we
when he gets those that he gets that serious look on his face and he looks like he could be Giovanni's kid. Like
Norman looks like Giovanni at times too. To be honest, though,
he does, yeah. It confused me a little bit, honestly.
Norman looks
For sure.
downright threatening at times in this manga,
Yeah, well, they say multiple times that he's the strongest gym leader. I'm
which is
like, I
hilarious
don't
because
see it.
in the game he is pathetically easy.
Yeah, he's like the easiest gym leader to beat, but for some reason in the manga they made him seem way tougher.
Well, because the manga also he
But
has this chip on his shoulder the entire time where he's kind of like the outsider.
mhm.
Like he doesn't agree with all of the gym leaders in their meetings and stuff, and they are all kind of like, hell, why aren't you following? Why are you always being difficult? Blah blah blah, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, well, he has like this unexplained grudge against like the higher ups in the hierarchy of the Pokemon Association.
The Pokemon Association. That is the funniest thing to me in this series.
For real. It's like literally like a government based around Pokemon.
Which is just getting introduced now because before it was like this they were basically just all like a free for all kind of.
Pretty much. It's like, yeah, there was like a whole like process of like becoming a gym leader and like everything else with the Pokemon League and everything, um but this is where it like really sets in like yeah, like the people who run the Pokemon stuff are actually running like the world.
Hmm.
Pretty bizarre sometimes.
It's a weird world. We
Yeah, for
also
sure.
so there's another cool arc where like after like Ruby and Sapphire continue on their journey, their Pokemon continue to evolve and improve along with they get their badges. There's a point though where like they each kind of get their own like sort of like mentor types. Like Sapphire runs into the flying type gym leader. I forget her name at the moment.
Um uh Winona?
I
Is
think
that
that's
it?
it. That sounds right. She runs into her and challenges her and actually gets defeated. And rather than like being all like butthurt about it, she actually like wants to be like trained by her in a sense, and she kind of becomes her master in a way. And then meanwhile, Ruby, on the
Mhm.
other hand, actually gains kind of like a relationship with Wallace, who despite being a gym leader, is also kind of a contest freak at the same time.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of an
Yeah, so
interesting
they both get their
parallel.
respective masters in their own fields.
Yeah. And there's like a little interesting parallel there. And it kind of all comes to a head when the two of them meet up again. And Ruby suffers from some serious like foot and mouth syndrome at times throughout this series, where he makes a big
Mhm.
point where like he doesn't actually really care. He's doing this just to like for the fame and attention, and then the second he gets all his ribbons, he's gonna fuck off back to Johto where he came from. And
Mhm.
this really pisses off Sapphire, who basically is like who thinks basically everything he said to her was a lie, and she then proceeds to get naked again because she does this every fucking time, and goes back to wearing just whatever like nature stuff she found before, and then they're not talking to each other again after that,
Mhm.
which is hilarious too. Because when Sapphire
Yeah.
goes to
Well,
face
a
off
part.
against, oh, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, a part of that was because I forget exactly what it was, but there was some sort of like I think they were attacked by wild Pokemon or something, and Ruby like instinctively like defended Sapphire, and like that kind of like showed like, oh, you're actually good at battling and you know what you're doing, and you lied to me about that, and that was here for
Yeah,
that as well.
yeah, like it's really funny though because after that encounter, Sapphire goes back to face Winnowa again, and Winnowa's just like, "Where are your clothes? Like, what happened?"
Yeah.
Because like she immediately because Sapphire immediately reverts back to her kind of insane wild girl personality after this, and she
Mhm.
actually wins the gym battle and gets the badge, and then proceeds to go off on her journey once again. Meanwhile, Ruby kind of starts going through some heroic reflecting, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Um, I guess you could call it that because they end up back at a sleep port, where they discover that everything's all fucked up over there, and
Yeah,
Ruby just kind of like goes and does a contest there, even though everyone's like gone, the whole place is flooded, everything's all messed up,
yeah,
and he
Ruby's
like
got weird
supposedly
priorities.
like yeah. And he like he goes he signs up for this contest where there are no other contestants because there's more important things going on. And Wallace kind of just shows up just to like, put him down and kind of like, you know, hold up the mirror and be like, look what you're doing, dude. And this is the big part where, you know, any negative feelings you have about Ruby really come to a head because he like flips the fuck out on his Feebass like it's his Feebass's fault that he lost, and it hurts its feelings so bad that it leaves him,
It
and
runs
like
off. Yeah,
obviously, yeah, it runs away, and obviously, like he pretty much instantly regrets doing that, and like runs out to try and find it. Um, but like at that point, the damage is done. Like you chased him off, and your own shitty personality just kind of came around to bite you in the ass, and it was a big character growth moment for him.
true. And it kind of opens your eyes too, because like he names all of his Pokemon. Like the nicknaming thing is here, and he gives them all affectionate nicknames. And he gave the
Mhm.
Feebas a nickname. Like he cared that much. It was just like he just like had like that one like lapse back into his like shitty personality, and it was like that was enough to really kind of wake him up to like, yeah, this is not the way to go.
Mhm. And I think part of the reason why he had that, like, kinda just breaking point where he snapped, I think the confrontation he had with Sapphire was a big part of that, because as we find out later, there's a reason why he doesn't like to show that he can battle.
Yes.
Um, and I think the fact that his hand was forced into it at that point in front of somebody that he cared about, actually specifically her. Um, I think that kind of put him over the edge a little bit and made him like extremely like susceptible to lapsing into that kind of shitty attitude.
Yeah. He is very similar to Bardo the more you think about it now, which is really funny to me.
Yeah, I pretty much like this time reading it through because I think the first time I read through this, I hadn't read any of Boruto or caught up with Boruto in any way. And during this reread, I really was picking up on like, yeah, this is really just proto Boruto, like because this obviously happened way before
This
Boruto
predates
was a
Bardo
thing.
by a long time.
Yeah. um, But yeah, I just found it really even honestly, like, the kind of the way they dress too is even similar.
Yeah, because Ruby is very flashy. Like
Mhm.
What's interesting though is after this the game the story then kind of transitions to like they start really getting into the whole Groudon and Kyogre fight, basically the world, the end of the world shit that happened in game.
Yeah.
And this is where Ruby kind of has his like reflection moment where he's going to be a better person going forward. And to symbolize that, he changes outfits. Now he's wearing his emerald outfit,
Hmm.
and he actually runs into Sapphire, and he doesn't really apologize, but his way of apologizing is he makes her a new set of clothes,
Yeah. And
which is
it
her emerald outfit as well.
was kind of like a whole symbolism thing because earlier when they had their big argument or whatever, Sapphire was like, "Oh, like you said that I would look good in the clothes you made for me, and that made me feel really happy, and that's why I wore them." And blah 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 blah. So I think him saying that was kind of like a way of being like, let's kind of bury the hatchet and work through this.
Yeah, it's just really funny that she has this whole deep emotional thing over like the fact that he said she looked nice in clothes, and I'm the whole time I'm thinking you're thinking like she's 10. Like what
Yeah,
10-year-old has thoughts like this? That's why I don't
yeah.
buy the age. I don't buy the ages all the time, but yeah.
Well, I think I think that they're kind of like forced to have like each new set of new main characters be around like between 10 and 12, but I feel like the writers feel like it's kind of limiting because they want to write deeper stories and characters and stuff, but like they're
Mm.
stuck with like 10-year-old characters. So it's like they want to write these kinds of like complex personalities and backstories and feelings and everything, but it's like, well, how much can I do with 10-year-olds? Like,
Well, that's why I find like the later arcs more interesting, like because age progression does happen in this universe. Because like spoiler for like way down the line from now, but the current, well, not current, but the later Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby arc, uh, Red and Green are in that, and they're like in their 20s now. So
hmm,
it's just a weird,
yeah, which I
interesting
do like that.
dynamic.
Hmm.
They actually grow up, so which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping that um I wonder how old Ruby and Sapphire are during that arc.
I'd have to look into that. I know that Red and Green are definitely like 20.
I mean, they'd have to
Watching,
be at least like 16, 17 if that age progression tracks.
yeah. Well, they definitely look older by the art style, but I haven't read it yet, so I'm not sure. But
Yeah, well, I still need to. I still have a lot more mangas to buy before I get to that point.
well, the second volume of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire comes out on Tuesday, so they're slowly getting there.
Mhm.
And then there'll
um,
be one more volume before they move on to Sun and Moon, which I'm gonna collect, but I'm like not super excited for.
I mean, to be fair, if the arcs that we've read so far are any indication, that'll probably be the best version of Sun and Moon we're ever gonna get. So,
That's fair. I mean, supposedly X and Y is the best version of X and Y out there, so
mhm. um, so I'm trying to think because so much happens, like from the point like where they have their little tiff at Fortress City. Um,
well, so the
Between then
net
and the end, like a lot happens.
yeah. Like so the next like 12 chapters are all basically the Kyogre and uh Groudon fight. Um and this builds up a lot. Like there's
Mhm.
points where Ruby and Sapphire are teaming up, like diving to the bottom of the ocean to find the spears to control Kyogre and Groudon. Meanwhile, there's also the subplot with Steven Stone going around, and he's oh yeah, we didn't even mention Steven Stone in the cave early on the island.
Yeah, I've realized as we've gone along, there's actually a lot of characters that we kind of just skipped right over.
Yeah, well, it's weird because the only characters that are like super developed in this are Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say like the interview guys, the reporter guys, we
Oh,
completely
right,
skipped
them.
over them, but they tag along with Ruby throughout a lot of it.
Yeah, they follow him around, and he's kind of just indifferent to them the whole time. I do like that how the
They're
camera
actually
guy
kind of
looks.
important.
They are. Um,
Okay.
I really enjoy the fact that the camera guy kind of looks like gold.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely weird. I will say, yeah, they're actually kind of important because, like, as you go along, like, you see the media is like specifically painting Team Magma as the bad guys, and then you realize later on that the Archie, the leader of Team Aqua, is actually the head of the media.
It's just like real life.
that's that's that fake news right there.
Yeah. uh, yeah, that actually was a really funny inside joke, which doesn't surprise me considering like I can see the why like Kasuga would write that because I can see Japan having a sense of humor about that.
For sure. Um,
So
but
I
yeah,
will say,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say like this. So they're covering a lot of the Emerald stuff now, despite this not being the Emerald arc. And
Mhm.
one thing that they touched upon that I really liked and found fascinating was they explained how the reason why Wallace becomes the champion in Emerald is essentially he won the championship years ago, but he had turned it down because he wanted to be a gym leader like his mentor, who we find out is actually Jean. And because of that, he actually Steven is
Mhm.
basically passing the champion cape over to Wallace again, so he can finally be the champion, like he had said before. And it was interesting that they kind of tied that in together.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so I kind of like how they handled the orbs in this story.
Hmm.
How like it's just like the games where like you use them to control the legendaries, but like they actually like
Yeah,
the
they
person that's
did.
holding them if they're holding it for too long. And like if you're not prepared for um we good?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say they kind of did like what the anime actually did, where the orbs like kind of controlled the person holding them, and like because like I remember there was a part where Pikachu was fucking possessed by the fucking red orb for a while in the anime.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do think I saw a couple of those episodes. Because that
Yeah,
was when the Ash stuff started actually trying to develop a plot.
yeah. Despite him not aging at all.
Yeah. Uh, it was just interesting the way that they handled all that.
Hmm. Um.
Um,
So we should probably get into now like the big like backstory reveal, which was the fact that Ruby and Sapphire actually knew each other as kids.
yeah, kids, quote unquote, which means like 6 years ago.
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't buy the 10-year-old, 11-year-old shit. But
For real.
yeah, so they reveal that they knew each other as young like young kids. And what makes this significant is we find out that they were actually kind of opposites. Like Ruby was like the crazy battler at the time, and Sapphire was like the ditzy girly girl. And what makes it interesting is there was a point where
Yeah.
like they got attacked by a salamence of all things, and in the process like because like Sapphire
Mhm.
couldn't defend herself, Ruby like went out of his way to protect her and ended up getting like a dragon claw to the forehead. And by doing this he actually kind of scared Sapphire, and Sapphire was like found him like scary, and that ended up basically causing deep rooted trauma for both of them in the long run.
Yeah, which basically caused both of them to have a complete 180 in personality. So now Ruby
Yeah.
doesn't want to show how good he is at battling because he gets that like, Norman mean mug and freaks people out. And Sapphire is all traumatized because she's like, well, my got really hurt and I hurt his feelings in the process because I wasn't able to defend myself. So I need to get stronger.
Mm. Yeah, it was an interesting like twist on that dynamic. We also then find out the reason why Norman was training for 5 years was because that incident was actually related to another incident where apparently the Pokemon Association was like hoarding Rayquaza to do tests on it. And in the process, that Rayquaza got out and the Salamence got loose, which led to the Salamence attacking the two of them. But also, because of this, Norman couldn't take his
Mhm.
gym leader test, and because he technically let the Rayquaza out, he was forced to basically hunt the thing down for 5 years and be separated from his family.
Mhm.
Uh,
Which means
this
that the whole Norman being away thing and all of Ruby's resentment towards that is actually kind of his fault.
in a way, um, and the sad part is too. We actually forgot to mention this earlier, but at one point, all the gym leaders have a meeting and they're debating who would they rather side with, Team Aqua or Team Magma. And the whole thing is like debating, and they're all kind of taking sides. And then Norman, being Norman, is like, I'm not picking either side. This is dumb. They're both evil. Oh, technical difficulties. I lost Matt. Sorry about that. We had a bit of a technical snafu there, but we're back. um,
I
so
think we got it fixed now. We'll see, but
this one's going to be an editing nightmare, but that's fine. I'm not doing anything tomorrow. um, but yeah,
um,
so we were talking about the gym leader summit where all the gym leaders were kind of deciding whether they wanted to side with Team Magma or Team Aqua, and Norman being the basically having issues with the Pokemon Association as a whole, essentially where it was like, I'm not taking a side. That's dumb. They're both obviously evil.
yeah, he was the only one showing any real like initiative and any real like critical thinking. Like, no, they're both obviously up to some shit. Like,
Even Roxanne, who is supposedly the smart one, was completely buying into the shit.
yeah. I feel like Wallace kind of understood, but you're kind of forcing his hand to pick a side, so he's just like, all right, shit. Like, I guess I'll pick a side.
Yeah, well, Wallace is. It's been implied that like being a gym leader is very important to him, and he doesn't want to jeopardize that at all.
Hmm.
Because eventually, like the whole battle is going on with all the two legendaries, and then like there's a whole bunch of plot threads kind of going on here. Like it's really funny. Like there's a series of chapters which are literally dedicated to the battle between Kyogre and Groudon,
Hmm.
and then suddenly Ruby and Sapphire get teleported to this like weird like grassy area, and
Yeah,
it's
it's the
uh
Mirage Island, right?
yes, and Jean and the twins are there, and essentially he kind of has to teach them about double battling.
Hmm.
So then Sapphire can face off against the twins to get her next gym badges.
Hmm.
Um, I thought this was a cool little arc because it really showed the character development between the two of them was improving a lot.
Yeah, and like while that's going on, we also have Norman's finally training Wally because Wally just randomly showed up again.
Wally in his
Um,
weird bondage mask, which he had for some reason.
Yeah, well, I think there was something related to his illness. It was supposed to help him breathe better or something.
You know, I forgot he was
Um,
sick. I forgot he was sick.
that's
Wait,
like his own character trait.
poor
Uh,
Wally.
yeah, but yeah, he actually has a competent team. Actually, Norman gives him a Flygon. Um,
Yeah, just straight up flag on. It's like here.
but like he's training him at the Sky Pillar to so they could work together to get Rayquaza. But then also meanwhile, we have the Elite Four who are working together with Wallace and Steven to awaken the Reggies to try and um, keep the battle between the two big legendaries contained. Like we get all these different like plot threads that are coming together at the same time.
And then Norman comes flying in on his Rayquaza. Like,
Yep.
what? Um,
Oh, I think if I remember correctly, the reason why the Pokemon Association had captured Rayquaza in the first place, I think they were trying to artificially create a green orb.
yes, they were, but it failed miserably.
Yeah, and he got real mad about it.
So I will say, like, I like this whole arc, like battle. It ends in the most anticlimactic way possible, though.
uh, Refresh my memory because it's been like 2 months since I read it.
So basically, by this point, like Ruby and Sapphire have their whole like epiphany moment where they finally realize who they actually are. Because despite looking identical to they how they looked as children, they can't recognize each other.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I'm sure part of it is just because their entire demeanor and personalities have changed over the course of
true,
time.
true. I still think though it's like Ruby looks identical. Like he just looks like a bigger Ruby now.
Well, you also got to figure this is the same franchise that that Team Rocket, like by Team Rocket, I mean Jesse and James. Uh, this is the same franchise where they could just dress up in any old fucking costume, where they're like, "Oh, I wonder who these fucking people are."
Yeah, I wonder who that ponytail is.
Yeah,
True. But they have their big final reveal epiphany where Sapphire reveals that they have a love confession, which I thought was very interesting. um,
yeah, because we've had like little like hints of this in previous arcs and stuff. With like Misty and Yellow pining after Red, and like all stuff like
Red's
that. But like,
red swimming in bitches over there in the corner, despite not having a sex drive at all. And
yeah, classic Shonen protag. Um,
meanwhile, these two just like straight up are like, yeah, we like each other.
yep, for real.
But we also get to see Ruby without his hat, and he looks identical to Norman.
Yeah, except he's got that big ass gash across
Scar,
his head.
which is how Sapphire recognizes him. But then
Mhm.
he just straight up ditches her, and teams up with Courtney, who makes a return.
Yeah, because I think that was like part of his like, I feel the same way about you. Now get over there so you don't get hurt because I'm gonna go and do exactly what I did when I was a kid and do it myself. Like
Yeah, and then even Wallace is like, "You idiot!" like calls him out for it.
and then
Um,
Courtney immediately gets a bunch of rubble falling on her and
yeah, she
she's
straight up
out.
dies. Kind of. She dies. Norman dies.
I think Steven dies too.
Steven dies. Like everybody dies, and I'm like,
People
oh,
actually die in this arc. It was weird.
well,
It was definitely
they die for like all of 5 minutes.
yeah, because
Because then this
okay.
pissed me off so much. This was such an anticlimactic end to what I thought was a really interesting battle, where Ruby just pulls a fucking Celebi out of his ass, and he's like, "I've had it on me the whole time," and then
Yeah,
it
that's
just
when they reveal like, "Hey, you've only seen 5 of my Pokemon this whole time. Guess what the sixth is?"
yeah, and it's a fucking Celebi. When I turned the page and saw it, I was like, "You're fucking kidding me." I was
Especially
like,
after the last arc where they made such a huge deal about how, "Oh, I need the rainbow wing and the silver wing and I need to weave them together into a capture net and I need to have this special Pokeball that only Kurt can make." And meanwhile, Ruby's over here. He's just got the fucking thing.
yeah.
Like,
Meanwhile, this fucking whack job from fucking Hoenn has one just chilling. But Yeah, he releases the Celebi, and then Celebi legit just makes 3 portals and just fucking zap. Everything's fine. It's like
Mhm.
I was so like I'm like, that's it? Like that's the conclusion to our fucking battle here?
Yeah,
But
it's pretty ridiculous.
it was a fun ride up to that point. That is my one gripe I have with this entire arc is that ending. I just thought was so fucking lazy.
Well, I think it just got to a point where he kind of wrote himself in the corner. He's just like,
Oh,
fuck.
he did. I didn't know how he was going to explain all of that because he killed Norman. I'm like, how is Sapphire going to get her last badge?
Hmm.
Um, and then this pissed me off too. They go to their final thing, and it's like, oh, Sapphire's got one badge left, and Ruby's got one last set of fucking ribbons he's got to collect. You turn a page, and they just have them. I'm like, we didn't even get to see it. I'm like, really?
Well, I mean, at least in well, I don't know, in true Pokemon Adventures fashion, I'm sure Norman was just like, "Hey, you did good, kid. Here's a badge."
Well, apparently the way it's explained is like it was a really hard fight, but because he was injured, she assumes that's why she won,
Hmm. And
which I guess fair.
technically, Ruby had already earned that last ribbon, but Wallace was just kind of hanging on to it for him.
Well, no, he had another row below that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, there was one final row, like the Master Cups, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, they kind of like really downplayed the contests and stuff. Which I mean,
Well,
like, yeah, it's like we said before,
oh,
they're not like particularly interesting, but
we forgot to talk about Fifi came back.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, a lot happened in that last like volume and a half. Like, there's a shit ton of things happened.
That I will say, Fifi's return was probably the most emotional scene in this entire story.
Oh, like way more emotional than the whole love confession thing.
The love confession was just 2 10-year-olds confessing their love for each other. It was like, yeah, okay, cool.
And then just
Um,
proceed to be awkward 10-year-olds.
yeah. Well, no, 11-year-olds by the end. That's right, because
Oh yeah, that's true. Because the 80
Sapphire's
days.
birthday happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fifi comes back and gets hurt by Archie, and both Archie and Maxie make fun of it, being like, "What an ugly piece of shit Pokemon! Who would love that thing?" And then Ruby basically like has a complete turnaround and basically makes the whole point about how much he appreciates Fifi and how she's beautiful on the inside. Not it's not the outside that matters,
Hmm.
which is a reference to the fact that Milotic needs beauty points to evolve. It's like one of the weirdest evolutions in all of Pokemon.
Yeah, you have to max out Feebas's beauty stat to get it to evolve into a melodic.
Yes. And then it evolves right there. And then he finally has that realization where he's like, you are the Pokemon I've been searching for this entire time.
Hmm. Classic.
And then it's implied that he basically steamrolled all the last competitions because he had a Milotic,
Hmm. It's about right.
which I guess fair. I mean,
Hmm.
you had to work for that damn thing. Um,
Yeah, no kidding.
but then it ends where I did like the ending where like they go back to Sapphire's hideout and Ruby's just filled it with junk and she's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, he made it to like a secret base with like all the little Pokemon dolls and everything.
Yeah, and she's so just not for it at all. She's like, "You ruined my fort."
Oh yeah, yeah.
But then he gets the call from his mom, being like, "Oh yeah, it's Sapphire's birthday, by the way, so come back. We have to
Also,
celebrate."
you dipped on your birthday, so we're doing a joint birthday party.
Yeah, pretty much. And you get that really nice shot of the two of them running off into the distance, which is pretty cool because they are definitely the most connected like protagonists we've had so far.
Hmm. For sure.
But then we get the stinger at the end where Giovanni returns, and he's basically got the remains of the two orbs, which have reverted into shiny stones.
Yeah, they like shattered during the whole battle and everything, and he's collecting up the pieces.
Mm. And it's interesting because then it's basically like leaves a stinger. It's like, ah, we're going back to the original cast next arc.
Hmm. Well,
And it,
the next arc is going to be the big congregation. Like, oh, we're going to get all the main characters together now.
oh my God, it's going to be everywhere because I like Kasuka's writing, but my God, his sense of like tone is not tone, his sense of like character like focus is so all over the place sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I will say this is the time where he actually got it right.
Okay.
Um, I'd say all things considered, Ruby Sapphire is easily the best written, even despite the ending.
Um, so I have very fond memories of Black and White, so I'm curious once we get back to once we eventually get to Black and White, how that's going to stand up. I did really like my time reading the Ruby and Sapphire. I thought it flowed very well. The abrupt ending aside, the flow was really good. I liked the twists, like the reveals, like everything got tied off very neatly,
Mhm.
and they did not leave any loose ends whatsoever.
Aside
Um,
from Giovanni.
well, that was the stinger at the end. I'll give that one a pass because it's essentially a catch for to get you to buy the next set of manga.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I'll give this one. So I had previously given the first arc, uh, Red, Blue, and Yellow. I'd given an 8. I gave Gold, Silver, Crystal a 7. I think I'll give this one an 8. I thought it was pretty much on par with the original. Probably better in certain aspects. Yamamoto's art has improved significantly. He really kind of found his voice by this point with
Mhm.
his art, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in the next arc as well.
I think I'm going to be a little bit more generous with this one, uh, because while I think as far as personal preference goes, like I like the gold silver story a lot. I like the red blue story a lot. But looking at it objectively, I think this one is probably the most coherent as a standalone arc. So I'm probably going to give it like a 9, maybe a 9.2. Like probably it's definitely in the higher, like especially if I'm looking at it as just a Pokemon arc and not just like an overall rating for manga in general. Like if I'm rating it in terms of like how well this compares to the other Pokemon arcs that I've read, this one's definitely like top tier. Like they they do such a good job of taking what's in the game and embellishing them and making them so much more, giving the characters real development. Because you start out not really liking Ruby, like, and I
No,
think
not
he's
at
written
all.
he's written very purposefully in that way. Like he doesn't want you to like him at the beginning, but like as you go along, you start to see more and more of what he really is on the inside, and as he goes through more and more trials, he starts to show like who he really is until he finally like has that moment when he loses Fifi, and that's like his big turning point where he's like, no, this is what I have to do, like this is what's right, I can't be a selfish little shit anymore.
Mm.
And he like really comes around and really becomes a whole character from that point onward. And that's something you haven't really seen up to this point in
No,
any of the
because
arcs.
honestly, yeah, Ruby and Sapphire are two of the most developed protagonists we've had so far. Because like, as much as I really like red, blue, green, yellow, crystal, gold, and silver, um, aside from crystal, they're all pretty one note to a degree. Like they have their gimmicks and like their little kind of personality quirks, and they kind of stick in that bubble. Granted, their stories are still going, so there's plenty of time to get more out of them
Mhm.
in the future. But right off the bat, like just from the start, like these guys are Ruby and Sapphire just go through entire character arcs, and I'm actually curious about their future appearances now because we kind of already have their full development cycle now, so everything else is just going to be extra going forward.
Yeah, because we're gonna be seeing them more in like the Emerald section, and then obviously there's the remake um for Ruby and Sapphire that has its own manga adaptations. We're gonna see them later on in that too.
Hmm.
Um, and since we know that some of the previous characters will be showing up in the later arcs as well, I think we can assume that we'll probably end up seeing Ruby and Sapphire at some point in other arcs as well. So I mean, you can only. I mean, No, I was gonna say you can only go up from here, but that's not true. It could easily take a dive.
True. I
But
mean, to be fair, I've only so far from what I've heard, everything going forward is good. There isn't a particular notable arc that I can think of that is negatively received.
mhm,
Granted, I only know up until Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire because I don't know anything after that so
yeah.
far.
Well, that's as far as the manga is right now, isn't it?
Well, Sun and Moon's art is fully written. They just haven't collected them in manga form yet.
Gotcha.
Like you can buy those weird like so you know how like there's like they started doing this with X and Y. There's like the Pokemon Adventures, like the legit really nice like manga editions, and then there's this just they don't have the adventures like subtitle. It's just Pokemon X and Y, and they're like floppy little tiny issues.
Yeah.
So they've released all of those for Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, and I think they're already doing Violet and Scarlet at this point. Like so,
Okay.
the uh the the next arcs, like two arcs, are done. They just haven't collected them yet because they're doing collecting them into the full manga versions is much slower, I guess.
For some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why, honestly.
Maybe they
It's
just feel like they can get more money out of it if they split it up into smaller sections.
prob probably maybe.
Especially since based on what we talked about, it seems like these newer arcs are shorter than the ones we've had up to now.
Well, it's interesting to me because like the next arc, Fire Red and Leaf Green. So this one was, I think 8 volumes total.
Um I think so, yeah.
The net Fire Red and Leaf Green, I believe, is uh like 5. I want to say.
Well, it's weird because Fire Red and Leaf Green is its own arc and Emerald is its own arc, but they're connected and they're part of the same box set.
So I for the collector's editions, it's a little different because they're I think Emerald is literally the last 2 volumes in that final big collector's edition manga.
Mhm.
Because it's they did kind of like Dragon Ball where like they're all 3-in-1s except for the last one, which is just a 2-in-1 for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's mostly like evenly split down the middle. When I'm looking at my box set, I think it's about the same. I want to say Fire Red Leaf Green is like 3 volumes, and then Emerald is four, but the first of that four is like a really thin volume.
Yeah, it's weird because like then you get to Diamond Pearl Platinum and that's like 14 volumes
I think it's 11.
or maybe 11.
I think it's
Either
11
way,
volumes.
it's pretty long. It's actually I think the longest arc yet.
Hmm.
Um because but then after that you get Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is 2 volumes, although one is massive and the other is tiny. It's like a really weird thing.
Yeah, I don't know how a lot of these people decide like how long or short a volume is going to be, or how many chapters they're going to put in it, or like, all right, we're going to make this one really short and this one really long. I was like, okay, well, you could just make them both regular length, but whatever.
Yeah. Because then like Black and White is 9 volumes, and then Black and White 2 is 4 volumes.
Yeah,
X and Y is 6. And it looks like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is gonna be 3.
it's just disappointing because I kind of wish that we would have. I mean, I don't necessarily think that we need like full like 7, 8, 9 volume arcs for like the remakes because obviously like those stories are already told. Um, but it'd be nice to have a little bit more than just 2 or 3 volumes to, kind of catch up with the old favorite characters,
I mean, apparently the new arcs are pretty short as well, because I was reading into it during our little technical hiccup there. Um Apparently because Japan they're already collected into manga, they just haven't localized it yet.
Hmm.
Apparently Sun and Moon is 6 volumes and Sword and Shield is 7.
Okay,
So I think Diamond and Pearl is the longest arc.
that makes sense. I mean that I think is like the first time that Pokemon has really tried to tell like a bigger story.
Mm.
Like even looking at the games. So it makes sense that they would need to do that. And that is one of the ones that I have read after this. And I guess I kind of see why they wanted to make it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm
which
looking
obviously we'll
forward to
get there when
getting
we get
there.
there. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, the next one shouldn't be that bad because they're both shorter arcs, the next two, so we should get through those pretty quickly. Knock on wood.
yeah, well, I think it would benefit us this time to kind of take each arc as its own episode because that it'll be a lot easier to get the reading done and um, cover in more detail than we've been able to up till now.
Yeah, we'll have to plan Diamond and Pearl at a time because that's going to be probably our biggest endeavor.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's also the first like the first point where Pokemon kind of like resets the volume numbers and starts telling more standalone stories.
True.
So I feel like from that point on it's kind of less pressing to continue the reviews at that point because where the next couple that we're gonna do is kind of like rounding off like the whole like big overarching story that
Yeah.
connects everything. Um, and then from then on, it's gonna be all standalone. So once we get like the big story done, like we can kind of just cover them as we feel like, at our convenience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I will say I'm looking forward to Black and White, obviously, because I have a soft spot for that one.
Mhm.
Diamond and Pearl, I'm curious about because I've heard really good things. I mean, like, obviously, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, that'll be easy to knock out because that's just 2 volumes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I apologize for our technical difficulties in this episode. I feel bad for you, Bill, because this one is going to be a little bit more difficult to edit.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably do that tomorrow at some point in the day.
Yeah. And it is a little upsetting because I was looking forward to doing this episode, and I feel like it kind of got thrown off the rails a lot because of our the constant glitching and everything, and then it all cut out and everything. But
Yeah, thankfully the way the pause feature works is there's not gonna be a huge gap there at all. But yeah, I'll try to edit the gaps out and hopefully it'll at least flow decently.
yeah,
But yeah. So once again, guys, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts in its own feed now on all the podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are also on YouTube with video and audio versions of the podcast. And you can also find all of our links at linktree/the Barber Who Games. And you could also come join us at the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to find all things gaming and collecting, the 3DO experience, Geek Addicts, talk gaming, anime, or just general nonsense. And with that, everybody, we'll see you all later.
have a good one.